Now I'ma put it down like that. I'm leaving, I ain't coming back. You don't like the way I act anyway. You really don't have to react. Don't try to change my mind, in fact. Honey, I've already packed all my stuff. We're no longer kids, let's move on. And you are not my kid, so I'm done. Please don't make me pull my gun. Sorry boy, I can't be the one. You know it, yeah. Nothing lasts forever. I can get fly, 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 fly. I can get fly, 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 fly. I can get fly, 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 fly. I can get fly, 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 fly. Relax your mind and let it unwind. No time for fight. Just open your eyes to see the light. Don't hesitate now. There's too much in front of you to take a hit now. Prepare for the worst, but prepare for the best. Cause only your mind holds the curse that you partner with it. I ain't tryna stop you from the love that guides you. I just wanna be the one to try you, mold you, make sure that you're on a good road. Little did you know, I can get fly, 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 fly. I can get fly, 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 fly. I can get fly, 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 fly. I can get fly, 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 fly. Ooh. And the flow that I live by. Just realize what it is and pass the lie. So don't be shy to get high. Got this green for the goodbye. Don't hold back on this here fly. I can get fly, 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 fly. I can get fly, 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 fly. I can get fly, fly. Fly, fly, I can get fly, 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 fly. Got a pack in the back and a seat on my left. What you wanna do, baby, you the best. Coming from the east, not the west. Southside, got it written on my chest. And you know this is real love. I just wanna be the one to guide you, mold you, make sure that you're on the right road. Little did you know, I can get fly, 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 fly. I can get fly, 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 fly. I can get fly, 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 fly. I can get fly, 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 fly.
Can see you. We're waiting for you to talk. Not say anything. What? Back. Go.
Apologies about that technical issue. My name is Cindy Pearl. Mapumulo. It is August, which makes this Women's Month. And of course, in South Africa, the 9th of August, which is only 5 days away, is known as the National Women's Day, which of course, again, is also my birthday. The reason why we celebrate this day, as some of us may already know, is that this day commemorates the 1956 March, which marks 64 years to today, where although this protest was against passes for Black women, we saw it has been recorded that about 20,000 women from across races, ages, and differing backgrounds marched together in solidarity towards the union buildings in Pretoria. And of course, today has been made possible by BOASA, which is the Business Women Association of South Africa. And now, before we get into the program and hear what our incredible speaker today, Phuthi Mahanyele-Dabengwa, has for us, I will allow the CEO of the Business Association of South Africa to deliver a welcome note for us all today. Kunyalala, over to you.
Hi, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Kunyalala Mapisa. I'm the president of the Business Women's Association. I think that the one thing I was requested to engage on this evening was to talk about, what are the positives that we can be looking at during the time that we find ourselves in. And I think that we can all agree on the fact that COVID-19 is one of the most incredible situations that we find ourselves in, and many of us, I don't think in our lifetime will ever live to see anything of the sort. And I think that what this begs for is to say, what is the type of leadership that we need in order for us to be able to navigate the environment that we find ourselves? Because the one thing that we know for sure is that going forward, we are going to have to look at things differently. And in so doing, we have to say, what is the nature of the leadership that we require in order for us to be able to navigate the environment that we find ourselves in? And I think it goes without saying that women lead in a particular way. And I think that this is something that we have spoken about for the longest time. And in many cases, this is seen as, it can be seen as a negative, or it can be seen as a positive. So if we say that we understand how women lead, in the sense that women tend to be connected to their being as human beings, because where we find ourselves in today is that we need to be connected to the environment around us. We need to be connected to other people. We need to be connected to everything that goes around us, because COVID-19 makes us realize just how interdependent we are as human beings, and the consciousness that brings to bear is such that we always have to be conscious of the environment around us. And I think that a lot of the problems that we find that compound the issue today is the fact that there is a huge disconnect between the leadership that we have and the people, in terms of what the needs are at a human level, because we oftentimes look at things from an economic perspective, or from a very high level, but disconnected from the human being. And I think that this is an environment that creates that kind of the kind of questions that we need to start asking ourselves, to say, what is it that we need to be doing differently? And I think that when we look at issues around COVID-19, it brings those kind of opportunities to say, as women, what are we supposed to be doing? Where are we supposed to be? But at the same time, it also gives us an opportunity to introspect and say, what is it that we can do differently? Because one thing that I know is that there's things that we know for sure, and this really speaks to the challenge we find ourselves in, and many of that comes from how we have done things in the past. But there's also a lot that we don't know. And I think the big opportunity there is that it allows us to live more consciously. It allows us to live more from a point of listening and hearing, what are we not seeing? How should we be doing things differently? And I think that for a lot of us, especially from a business point of view, a lot of the entrepreneurs that are members of the Businesswomen's Association and those that are not members of the Businesswomen's Association, they are going through that period of introspection and saying, what is it that we can be doing differently? What is it that we can be, how can we be leading? But what we know for sure is the fact that COVID-19 offers an opportunity that we've never had before, and this is something that we need to start taking into cognizance. And then that brings us back to, what is the Businesswomen's Association? What can we be doing? What are we supposed to be doing? The Businesswomen's Association as an association is celebrating 40 years this year, and this brings us to a point where we say, what have we been doing all these years, and what can we be doing going forward? Are we supposed to be doing the same thing that we did in the past, or can we be doing things differently? And I think that this gives us an opportunity for us to say, we need to look at different ways of doing what we've always done, and then say, how do we invite all the other people to be able to say, we need a different type of leadership that will be able to rise to the occasion in terms of the space we find ourselves in. And so, with that said, I just want to say welcome to this conversation. This is the first of a series of conversation that the association will be having in different spaces, and we really want to welcome our guest speaker this evening, and just say, please enjoy the conversation. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Kunyalala. That was the president of the Business Women's Association of South Africa, for that insight. Absolutely loud and clear. I think one of the things that really do come to mind is one who is an entrepreneur and has been for about 10 years or so, still a young person, is the value in finding really great networks and other women and working together for a common cause. And I think this also just takes me back to that march in 1956 again, as a young woman, to say, how can I also be intentional in finding women who do share a common goal? How do I work with more women, but again as well, how do I open doors with other young women or younger women than myself? So I'm not going to waste any more time. I am going to introduce our incredible speaker today. I'm going to read her bio. She obviously has a very long and illustrious biography, and she has so many achievements within the business or within her career. So I'm just going to go ahead and read this. I'm absolutely excited, as many of you that are joining here today. So as we already know, her name is Phuthi Mahanyele-Dabengwa, who joined Naspers as CEO, Naspers South Africa, in July 2019. Now, before she joined Naspers, she was the co-founder and chairperson of Sigma Capital, which is an investment holding company that was formed in the year 2015. Now, before Sigma, Phuthi held a position of CEO with Shanduka Group, an investment holding company which she joined in the year 2004 and left in 2015, where then she would co-found Sigma Capital. And prior to that, she was the head of project finance at the DBSA, which is known as the Development Bank of Southern Africa. Earlier in her career, she spent a few years in New York at Fieldstone, an international firm that specializes in the financing of infrastructure assets. She later then transferred to the South African office, leaving as vice president. Now, of course, these are huge achievements, and she has put so much effort in getting where she is today. But one thing that Phuthi might not remember is that a few years ago, I think it was 2014, 2015, is that I did get an opportunity to meet her as a global shaper, and she falls under the YGL program of the World Economic Forum, which stands for the Young Global Leaders. And she was giving back at the time as the CEO of Shanduka Group to a particular school in Soweto, and I got to meet the person Phuthi. And so I can attest today that outside of this long and illustrious list of achievements that she has attained over the years, she's also an absolutely incredible person and very warm. So without any further ado, Phuthi Mahanyele-Dabengwa, over to you.
Thank you so much for that introduction, Cindy. That's very kind of you. Good evening and welcome to everyone. I trust you're all keeping safe and that those who are affected by COVID-19 are we look pointedly at ourselves as women and the roles that we play more of in our families, as well as in broader society. It should be no surprise to any of you that Michelle Obama is a huge source of inspiration for me. I'd like to quote from her. She says, "All of us are driven by a simple belief that the world as it is just won't do, that we have an obligation to fight for the world as it should be." And yes, we do have to fight for it. All of us have had what Michelle Obama called that first flare of outrage, that moment when you realize that as a woman, you were seen at best as a second class citizen. At worst, you were dismissed as inferior and unequal to the task, whatever that task may be. It happens to all of us all the time. When a new project comes up, we are overlooked. When a meeting is called, our views are ignored. Our talk is interrupted, all because of our gender, not because of what we have not achieved, or at least not because of what we have achieved, and not because of what we know or have experienced, but all because of our gender. Then, to make it even more difficult for us, you throw in race. This is our legacy. But our legacy is also one of triumph. Our legacy is one of success as well. All around us, we can see that in spite of all the negative issues that we deal with. All of us here are evidence and witness of that success. I know this sounds simplistic, but I'm here due primarily to one thing: education. My parents, and mostly my father, as my mother died at a young age, were determined that their daughters would have their own place at the table, that their daughters would have a voice, and that their voices would be heard. Of course, as a young girl, I never pictured myself in a corporate boardroom talking to my peers and colleagues. I saw myself on a stage dancing. I wanted to be a ballerina. Ballet seemed for me to be moments of perfection, captured in a movement, poise, and balance. Clearly, some of those early dance lessons and appreciation for the art have stuck with me because I believe most of what we do, most of life itself, is about movement, poise, and balance. And that one thing: education. From my father's love of learning, I witnessed firsthand the power of knowledge. My father raised his two daughters alone as my mother had passed away at the age of 42. He worked firstly as a mechanic at Volkswagen. And one day he saw that the company was offering scholarships. He applied and ended up doing a Bachelor of Economics at the London School of Economics. He went on to do an MBA at De Montfort University in the UK and finally obtained his doctorate. Then he went into business and became very successful. He is my inspiration. And he is the reason I went on to do further the degrees that I did at Rutgers. Of course, he decided I should go to Rutgers and then at De Montfort for my MBA. Essentially, I did the exact same degrees as he did because that's what he decided. And I did what my dad told me. there have there have been many lessons gained from my father and in the early years of my career, which provided a strong basis for the trajectory that I've had. People often ask, what drives me? It's a complex question with no complete answer. But I've always had a hunger to grow, to do more. So when I was in my 20s working a steady job, I knew that if I wanted this to happen, I would need to do something different. And so I decided that I would go and work overseas in a top tier investment bank. And I had an opportunity to make an application for an internship at Fieldstone, a New York investment banking firm, working with structured products to help develop emerging economies. Anyway, when I submitted my first application, it was rejected, not just once, but twice. The third time, they had to accept because I kept on submitting this application. Anyway, it was a tough environment, very formal, corporate, with lots of written and unwritten rules. Junior professionals didn't wear colors. The uniform was such that we were to wear black or navy or gray. I learned that unwritten rule very quickly. The real issue was getting access to work to be able to prove that I could do this. I had to learn on my feet and put aside my shyness. I'm naturally a very shy person, and to go and introduce myself to people and get involved with things that weren't going to come my way unless I moved forward was not an easy task. But as we know, perseverance is key. I learned quickly that work or being successful at work wasn't just about your skill in doing what you do. It was also about your ability to move toward and engage with those people working in your environment. So picture me. I'm a very young Black female intern back then, the only Black intern. I'm from South Africa and I'm among a group of Ivy League graduates um, in a high level corporate environment. And all of them were American, with the exception of me. I doubt anyone had even heard of my university that I came from. And I assumed that they were judging me based on this. It was one of those moments when you start having negative thoughts about your abilities and begin to doubt yourself for no good reason. It's a default thought pattern for many of us as women. But then I realized that it wasn't personal. These people, these were people who wanted a job done. They had to have the confidence that whoever got the assignment would be able to deliver. Whether they liked me or not was irrelevant. And I knew I only had 6 months to make an impression to get a job at the end of it. I wasn't going to get an assignment by allowing my insecurities to get the better of me. So it was time for me to move. I decided that I'd go around and introduce myself to the partners. And of course, not everything went according to plan. You will learn to never assume that because someone is the same gender or race as you, that they will necessarily treat you the same. But I stuck to it. My break came from a white male mentor at Fieldstone. His name was Andrew Cavitman, and he decided to assign me work. I was meticulous in preparing that first report, checking and rechecking it. I was, to go back to the ballet analogy, poised. And it worked. By the end of that internship, I was offered a job and worked my way up to becoming one of the vice presidents in the company. This story for me is important because in discussions about gender equality, we should interrogate our own thinking and our own stereotyping. Sometimes support comes from the most unlikely places. And if you are willing to grasp that opportunity and to run with it, great things can happen. This is what happens when people take the time to work with you and engage with you in a meaningful manner. It's important that we recognize the more tangible, intangible aspects that come with a senior position that can help more junior women in our organizations to chart successful careers. As senior women leaders, we're able to open doors. We're able to assign work. We're able to help them to network. We need to bear this in mind and take it on as a personal mission. Today, more women are graduating from universities than men in South Africa. Yet, what do we see when we look around our boardrooms? It seems that less than 5% of women have made it to the top. Where have all those ambitious and intelligent women gone? The gender gap needs to close for many reasons. And we have a duty to never forget that we are here to make sure that those ambitious, smart women are recognized and that they are given their place at the table and that they believe and act as though they deserve it. The opportunities I had as a young professional, which were given to me, were because the people who were empowered thought and behaved differently. They were willing to engage with me. It is why I think it is so important that we pay it forward. It is part of the balance we strive to achieve. I learned from engaging with that experience and not shying away from it. It was a difficult decision to not stay in New York, but I realized that it was time for me, as in those days, it was the 90s back then and the early 2000s. And there was a lot of opportunities in South Africa in terms of BEE transactions that were being done. So in terms of corporate finance and private equity, there was a number of opportunities for a professional like myself. So I really wanted to come back and work in South Africa. And so I came back and I worked briefly with the DBSA, but I realized that the DBSA, as respectable a place as it is, it was not the place for me. And out of the blue, I received a phone call from a friend. His name was Rowan Smith, and he wanted me to meet with the chairman of a company called MCI, Millennium Consolidated Investments, which then became what became to be known as Shanduka. I told him I wasn't looking for a job. So he told me, look, just hold on. And he handed over the phone to that chairman. And he, so we talked. I talked to the chairman, who turned out to be Cyril Ramaphosa. And he invited me to come and meet with him. I went, and within just a few minutes, I realized that this was for me. I couldn't explain it at the time, but it was what I wanted. And I think it's a lesson in just knowing that sometimes you need to trust your intuition. It might not make sense. I mean, in this case, I was in a situation where I was going to say no to an established, financial institution, and I was saying yes to a brand new organization whose future was uncertain. But my intuition was telling me that's where I needed to be. Anyway, I called my friend Rowan, and I told him that I didn't know what job they wanted me to do exactly, or what salary they wanted to pay, but I wanted to come and work for Shanduka. I was back in motion, and it felt great. And so it really is important for us to trust our own intuition sometimes. I think what I learned was also to be open to all eventualities. I spent 11 good years at Shanduka. And then, because life is not always what we plan, I had a stroke. It took me some time to recover from that stroke. And when a catastrophe of this size hits you, you need to dig in deep, and you need to trust those who are close to you. I thought everything was just as before, but I was the only one who could not see how bad it was. My family was amazing. Slowly, balance came back into my life. And then I was approached by RMB in terms of the fund that we started for Sigma Capital. And then, of course, I was approached by Naspers. Again, at that time, when Naspers approached me, I wasn't looking for a job because I was very comfortable running my fund and, working, it was a very comfortable environment. So I wasn't really keen to go back into a corporate setting. But I agreed to meet with the group CEO of Naspers at Amsterdam. And so here I am today. It was a quick decision, but it was the right one for me. And so, what have been the enduring lessons throughout my journey? I think I've always been open to the possibility that your life can change. And so that is something that is important. I was also always very much aware of the circumstances that my parents had grown up in. But my parents had instilled in us that ability to dream, to believe that we could change our lives, that it could be better, that there could be more. And I still believe that. I'm a very spiritual person, and I take time for introspection and to reflect. what is around me and what is happening daily. I believe we should always dream. We should always work towards changing things for the better. And it doesn't have to be something that is that big for everyone, but for you, it will be something that is big. And so, I believe in dreaming and striving towards more and better. We all have that power within us, whether you are physically blind or physically able or not able. We all have that ability within us. As long as we have life and we are living, we have that power within us to dream. My life does work out, but life does work out differently sometimes for some of us. And so things don't always work out as expected. And I know I'm one of the fortunate few. And that is why it's so important for us as Black career women to always remember to speak to younger people, to be on stage to show them that where you have succeeded, they can too, and they can even do better than you. And that by being a role model, we can give them that hope that it is possible because we've all started somewhere. This approach is partly responsible for us at Naspers having set up an entity called Naspers Labs, which is the company's South African social impact project. Naspers Labs are all situated, these are all labs which are computerized, so all young people coming into them. And we have unemployed youngsters at the ages of 17, 20 to 25 coming into the labs. And we've got them all, in different parts of the country. And they come in, attend the labs to learn how to become economically active. And everything is done on the computer. And so the young people are forced to learn how to use computers because everything, all communication is on those computers. And so they are trained to either become, to unlock their potential of being participants in the township economies, either as employees or as micro entrepreneurs. The vision is to equip them with personal confidence and necessary skills to help them to find jobs and to start an enterprise, as this is something that is so important. More than 2,000 youngsters have been through the labs, of which, and of this 2,000, 60% of them have found viable jobs. The labs have only been running for just a year, and so it's a brand new entity for us, and we hope to do more. There's a lot of work that's going into it now. These youngsters will themselves become role models in the future, and that is what we're working towards. But if we are to make significant socioeconomic changes, then we need to think beyond that. Underlying all empowerment is economic growth. We're using technology to develop engines of economic growth. A prosperous country can offer opportunities for women and young people to contribute to society in more meaningful ways. Naspers is one of the top 10 consumer internet companies in the world. We own or build leading technology companies addressing, or you could say engaging, with people's everyday needs. In many ways, digital transformation is part of this engagement process. And this is significant for the empowerment of women. Digital transformation can help women to overcome many barriers. For example, e-learning platforms enable remote learning and provide access to knowledge previously denied to them. Finance and banking applications that help women to manage their own finances independently. The fourth industrial revolution is a key factor in closing the gender gap over the coming decades. And the gender gap is real. We all know that. We've all experienced it, and we must all challenge it every step of the way. I mentioned earlier my praise for the people who have been my mentors. I'm passionate about mentoring, but I also agree with what Michelle Obama said. We have to turn our passion into action. It is so important that we really do take into account all of the issues that are faced by young people and look at ways in which we can change the many issues that young people face. Mentoring is something that we should all be doing all the time. It is not a one-way relationship. Me in the workplace sharing knowledge with you and assigning you projects. No, it is a reciprocal relationship, or what is referred to as reciprocal mentoring. And this is particularly important when it comes to gender. In a reciprocal mentoring relationship, men and women play complementary roles, one in which we learn from each other by working beside each other. It is a well known but much ignored truth that one party does not need to be disempowered for the other to be empowered. We know from several studies that the strength of a team depends on its diversity, that in diversity, growth, learning, and innovation happen, that by embracing and encouraging diversity, we become better leaders. In fact, when you think about it, you look at some of the countries that we have around the world, imagine if many of them had women leaders. I tweeted recently about countries that have overcome COVID. And when you look at that, you see that they are all countries that are run by women. And we see some of the biggest economies in the world run by men who have really struggled in dealing with it. And so our strength is not to be found in fearing the strength of others. Our strength is in our willingness to celebrate and to act on that strength of others. Yes, it is a challenge. When I talk at schools, I know I'm not seen by the students as I see myself. They see an old person, and I guess that immediately creates a gap in terms of their ability to engage with me. They look at my shoes, my dress, and make assumptions about me being from a very privileged family who has come to talk to them about changing their world. And often these kids who don't even know if they are safe going home after class are really just trying to see what is it, what value can you potentially add to them, because they're assuming that you don't understand what they face every day, not knowing that you also grew up in very challenging circumstances. But notwithstanding this, we have a duty to persevere and to always engage. Working with people, engaging with them at many levels is what inspires me. Life is complex, and we make or are faced with complications at many points in our journey. But like a dance, if we keep in motion, know when to poise and consider, then we will find the balance. This is how we begin to engage. This is how we keep fighting for the world as it should be. Thank you.
What an incredible address, Phuthi. I am absolutely inspired. I have absolutely no doubt that every single woman, young and old, that has been tuning in here today is also very inspired. And what I liked a lot about your address is how authentic it is, and that it comes from a real person. Because a lot of the times, as young people who still want to get, to the upper echelons of whatever career path we have taken, sometimes it seems as though it is too far ahead of us, or it is impossible based on where we come from. And I love the fact that you also, shared about a very personal story of when you had the stroke. A lot of women, especially during this time, are going through so much due to the pandemic, the gender-based violence. Those are the realities, of many women across this country and the world, in fact. And for you to be here today and inspire us so, so much and share about your personal story and your career story as well, and how I love also how you had mentioned about how you got to this particular entity, and you then started doubting yourself, and that is usually the default setting with a lot of us women. I know that I have struggled a lot with imposter syndrome, or the tiara syndrome, where I'm like, okay, I'll just work from the back, and somehow someday I'll get to the top. But you don't really go for it because you feel like people are going to start judging me. Maybe whatever judgment people might pass on to me as a woman. So thank you so much. Thank you very much, for your heart, the projects that you're working on to make sure that you empower the next generation of young people as well is absolutely appreciated. I am also, learning from you, taking a leaf from your life as well, to make sure that in the little ways that I can as well, and wherever it is that I am, I can also give back. This quote from this unknown author who said, "It doesn't matter where you are in life, you always have enough to give back to other people." And that for me has been the reminder. Thank you very much. Thank you very much.
Sure.
All right. As we all know, the Business Women's Association of South Africa, at their heart is the empowerment and inspiration of women. And so in the coming weeks, they will be having, a series of other sessions where there will be master classes, workshops. Please, I implore you to please visit their website and check out some of the things that that they are availing for women out there, such as the master classes, etc. And they have different partnerships to make sure that they deliver such workshops for us. I know for a fact that I'll be signing up, so I do also encourage you watching today to also sign up for these. Right now, we are going to be watching a video by the HYBR. Tune in. If you're only tuning in right now, you have missed out. But luckily, because this is digital, you can always go back on the social media platforms of the Business Women's Association to watch the inspirational addresses that two incredible women gave us today. Thank you once again to everybody that has taken their time and data to join us and watching this absolutely amazing event that has been put together by the Business Association of South Africa. And as I had mentioned earlier, please do visit the social media platforms of the Business Association of South Africa, or visit the website, which is www.bwasa.co.za. Thank you everybody for tuning in. Until next time, goodbye.